So I was pumped. I was like, all right, so we know what it is. He said that, you know, you only get worse for 4 weeks or less, and then you get better often without any sort of treatment. I know some people get IVIG or plasmapheresis, but some people with Guillain-Barré syndrome release will get better without it, since it's a bit more temporary. So I was like, oh, great, I can get back to running pretty soon. It won't be too long. And so I took the following semester off from school because, on top of having Guillain-Barré syndrome, like we didn't really know much about it. So we were like thinking, you know, what if all of a sudden it does turn severe and I am completely paralyzed? I'd like to be home with my family. And on top of that, after getting those two, the nerve conduction and EMG test, my neurologist suggested that I get spinal tap just to be sure. Yeah. So I got that, and you know, it came up positive. So I was like, yeah, okay, finally we were like 100% sure of what my disease is. But I paid a price for the spinal tap because my spinal column didn't close up for about a week. So I had spinal headaches for a week. From the sound of it, you guys know what those are like. So yeah, that was actually during the first week of school. So that combination made me not go back to school that semester. So I decided just to make the best of it. I got really good at various Xbox games. And I also became a coach for the outdoor track team at my high school. And that was like a really rewarding experience because there's not very many 19-year-olds that are like assistant coaches at a high school. Like I wasn't just like going to practice. Like, I was coming up with all the workouts and I was doing everything behind the scenes. And it was a really great experience because I'd like to be a college coach someday. So it's a good stepping stone. So this whole time I had this disease, I was just like, whatever I had, I was like, I'm going to make the best of this situation, no matter what it is. Because we all get dealt cards in life, and you can only really change how you play the cards. You can't change the cards that you're dealt. So during the season, though, that I was coaching, I continued to get worse and worse. I was just going to the weight room that we had at the high school and working out, general rehab, and I would just use that as an excuse for why it's getting worse. Like, oh, I did too much yesterday, or oh, it was too hot yesterday, or it was too cold today, which can both happen in the same week in New York. So that I was just sort of in denial, and eventually it was just too much to ignore. So I started doing my own research, and I found out that I probably actually had CIDP, not Guillain-Barré syndrome, since I was still getting worse. So I actually emailed my neurologist and said, hey, I think I actually have CIDP, can I get a reevaluation? So he got me in pretty soon after, and then he was like, yeah, you have CIDP. So that's why I say I diagnosed myself, basically. So yeah, then he was like, and by that time I was like walking with a cane. Last time he saw me, I was walking relatively normally. So then he was like, you know, we can get IVIG, you can get plasmapheresis, Prednisone. Well, and he was really leaning towards IVIG because he said that plasmapheresis is pretty invasive. So I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. So it took a while before the insurance agency was finally allowing us to get IVIG, which is crazy. Like, if you have CIDP, you should be just getting IVIG. There shouldn't be like a battle for it. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so I got that, and it took about 5 weeks for it to actually kick in and start working. So during those 5 weeks, it looked like I was doing everything that I felt like I could, and I was still declining. But I still, like I said, I just made the best of every situation. Like, I remember one time I went to a pool party with my friends. It was like I could still like swim around as long as, like, floating in the water doesn't really require that much energy. But I just made the best of it, and I was making fun of myself. And like whenever my friends made jokes, I was like, guys, stop. Those jokes really get on my nerves. And one of my friends actually hadn't seen me in a while. I was like, what's wrong? I was like, oh, my parachute didn't open. I was coming up with all these stories, and then I told him I had a nerve disease. He was like, I don't know. Like, he thought I was still lying, so I guess I'm a good liar. Yeah, so I just tried to, you know, keep a smile on my face the whole time, and part of the reason I thought that was a good idea, not just for me, but like for everyone around me. Like, I just wanted to let everyone see that no matter what you're going through, you can always put a smile on your face. It doesn't really matter what it is. So it took a while before IVIG started working, so I went back to the neurologist, and I was like, hey, I don't know what's going on, like, can we get plasmapheresis, or like, what should we do? And then he's like, all right, well, I want you to keep doing IVIG, just hold out a little bit more. And I was like, I just felt like he was not being as aggressive as he should, but I waited, and he was right. It did actually start to kick in after 6 weeks. I was just a bit of a late responder. This is just anecdotally speaking, I have heard that the later your diagnosis and treatment begins, the longer it can take for your IVIG to start kicking in. So that made sense as like 9 months before I actually got diagnosed and started getting treated. So by the time I started actually working, I was in a wheelchair some of the time. Sometimes I was like walking around with four-arm crutches. And again, I made the best of the situation, and I just decided to sign up for online classes through Brockport, which was awesome that they had that. I got a lot of my gen eds out of the way that I still had left over. And I really boosted up my GPA because I didn't have my friends coming over until like 2 a.m. and hanging out, and like the night before an exam or something. Yeah, I got my GPA up really well, and I was just trying to stay really positive. And that's like when I started looking into nutrition and like just healthier lifestyle practices. Because actually, before I got IVIG, I was like, well, if my immune system's attacking myself, I should probably eat like garbage so my immune system isn't good enough to attack myself. That was my rationale. I kind of knew it didn't really make sense, but in the back of my mind, I knew that once I got IVIG, I was going to have to change my diet, and I just like taking advantage of the last time I was going to eat cake and stuff. So then I tried a bunch of different diets. It was like I tried the anti-inflammatory diet, which was just confusing. Like you had to like memorize which foods were inflammatory, which weren't, and it was too much. So I tried that, and then I tried the Walls diet by Dr. Terry Walls, a doctor who has MS. And she had pretty decent success with following that diet. It's sort of like a grain-free, dairy-free. She also advocates eating like a bunch of vegetables and a bunch of fruit and stuff like that. So I was like, well, this really makes a lot of sense. And then after a while, I stumbled across a YouTube video of like a low-fat raw vegan, and so I was like, this is going to be nuts. And it was just like she just eats fruit in the morning, fruit for lunch, and then like salad for dinner. And then I was like, that's crazy. And then like the next day, I found myself looking at it again. I was like, well, maybe I could do that. And then I tried it, and I experienced great results. Like within a couple of weeks, I was improving in what would normally take me a matter of a month. So that's why I really think that nutrition has like a big role in how well you recover. Since then, though, the fruit prices and quality have not been very good. So I've gone back to eating like rice and other vegan foods and stuff like that. But I think it's really helped out my recovery quite a bit. And since then, I have gone from having IVIG every week to having it every other week, then every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks. Now I'm down to every 5 weeks. And one thing I forgot to mention is I was on Prednisone. Like when I went back to see if we should get reevaluated for IVIG, my doctor was like, all right, well, let's put you on Prednisone too. So he put me on 60 milligrams of Prednisone every day for like 6 months before he wanted to begin the taper. So I was on Prednisone for about 1.5 years, and I did notice that right at like 2 weeks after I went low-fat raw vegan, the weight just like melted off me without even like really trying. So I was like, wow, that's an awesome added bonus. Yeah, I mean, like that's pretty much. I pretty much just got better since the IVIG started working. I didn't really have any like flare-ups or anything, but I have had like, a lot of sprained ankles and stuff, just because I still have a lot of lower leg atrophy. I'm still trying to work. That's like where my weakest part is. I'm sure for a lot of people. Most people are affected more distally than proximal, yeah. So in physical therapy, we're like this summer. I'm really working on like my lower leg strength, especially. Yeah, and I guess that's pretty much my whole story. So the next topic I wanted to cover for you guys is just staying positive with CIDP, because that's what a lot of my YouTube. Because I have a YouTube channel, as Joe mentioned. That's what a lot of my channel is about, is just staying positive. So I have a whole list of the positives CIDP has brought me. For one, it's brought me closer to my family. They were there physically for me, like when I needed help getting up the stairs and stuff. And they were just there like the whole time. My mom she brought me to IVIG and physical therapy and stuff, and we just hung out. And my mom started reading the autoimmune epidemic and getting to know autoimmune diseases so that we both had something to talk about. We're both just learning about this whole new thing because it was so new to us. Like, I think neither of us even knew what an autoimmune disease was beforehand. And then with that, I also found out that I have a really great support system. My friends, my family, like, no one really abandoned me or anything. My friends would make sure to get me out of the house and wheel me to the movies. And like, I would go to fires with my friends, and they would just like pick me up and carry me because the wheelchair wouldn't go across all the grass. So, like I said, I got a higher GPA just because I didn't have my friends to bother me when I was trying to study and stuff. And learning to walk again can really give you a lot of confidence because after I came back to school, the first semester I was back to school, I was like, well, if I learned up walking, I think I could handle 2 majors. So that's why I'm also a kinesiology major. It just makes you appreciate a lot more things. Like, you basically had something so basic stripped away from you. It's like walking. Like, I mean, probably none of us ever thought that we would have to be fighting just to walk again. Most people just learn to walk once. I really just gave myself like a higher standard of health. Like, ever since then, I've been not only following that I eat better, I've been making sure. I didn't always carry around a water bottle, but now I do. Trying to get as much sleep as I can. Just my whole standard of health is just a lot higher just because of my autoimmune disease. And I'm glad I got it so early in life, so that the rest of my life I can be a lot healthier. And I had a lot of opportunities that CIDP has brought me, like being a coach, being able to talk to you guys, being able to help people on YouTube and Facebook, and like whenever I get messages from people saying that I helped them out a lot, like that just reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I've learned also to really just slow down, not take anything for granted, just enjoy life, because I was forced to slow down. I couldn't move very quickly, and I sort of felt like my life was on hold for the 2 semesters that I was home. So again, I just tried to make the best of it and just tried to move forward in other aspects of my life, like coaching, exercise physiology, things like that. Photoshop, I got pretty good at Photoshop too when I was laid up. Got pretty good at like putting my friends' faces on animals and stuff. Oh, and I care even less about material items just because, you had something so basic as your leg stripped away. Like, who cares about your Xbox when you can't walk? And I found that you can also, without even talking, you can just inspire other people just by like how much of a badass you are. Like if you're not feeling down with your condition, and everyone just sees that, like, how is that person smiling with everything that they're going through? And then they're just like, well, what I'm going through is pretty trivial, and I think I was having a bad day. I should be more like this person. And I mean, I think we can all inspire more people than we actually give ourselves credit. You think of all the people that inspire you that you've never told them. There's probably a lot of people that you've inspired that have never told you that you inspired them. Another thing I encourage people to do is write your own list. You probably all have a bunch of lists of things that, like positives from CIDP that you maybe never thought about until you actually write them down. And then maybe when you're feeling down, you can look at that list again and just say, like, see all the good things that CIDP has actually brought you. So the next topic I want to talk about is specifically what I did in order to help my recovery. So some things may apply to you, some things may not, or you could just tweak them a little bit so that they do apply to you. So the first thing I did is just more fruits, more vegetables, less junk food, more plants, and less animals. Just like eating more fruits and vegetables is probably always going to be good. I don't know many doctors who are going to say that that's not a good idea. And less junk food, just like when you're eating, try to think like, is this going to benefit me in any way? And if it's not, I mean, the decision's always up to you. But just be conscious of what you're eating. I know I used to cheat a lot. Like when I first started being healthy, I was always making excuses. Oh, it's someone's birthday. Oh, it's Tuesday. Oh, it's so just ease into it. If you do want to try to be healthier, try not to do everything overnight. It took me a couple of years to make a transition into healthier food, because your taste buds do change. If you try to go overnight, you probably think it's just not going to taste very good. You won't like it. So just make small changes in your nutrition, and I think it can help a lot. Another thing I thought helped a lot with music. It could really just change your attitude. Whatever music you think makes you think more positively. I personally like songs about comebacks. Like there's actually a whole CD I listened to by Red Light King. It came out in just like 2013, like while I was recovering, which was brand new. It was called Something for the Pain, and like almost all the songs are about redemption and comebacks and stuff. Like, well, this is the CD for me. So I listened to that all the time. It was like that was my CD for a couple months. And then basically just change your perspective and see CIDP or Guillain-Barré syndrome as an opportunity to show other people what a badass you are. So that's my common theme here. You know, you can really inspire other people, and I think that's important to realize. Whether you're inspiring people or you could, like, if you're not thinking very positively, then other people may not think very positively. And I think it's important for not only you and your recovery, but for other people around you and the ones you love. I was specifically say like one thing over and over again. Like I'll give you guys an example. In my freshman year of college, I came in to the cross country team, and I was like, these guys are a lot tougher than I am. Like not only are they in better shape, but like they can go through workouts, experience a lot more pain than me. So I decided that I was going to get a lot tougher. So my affirmation was, I am the toughest one on the team. So I made that the background of my computer. I wrote it on a piece of paper and put it on my wall. So it was like the last thing I saw before I went to bed, the first thing I saw when I woke up. And I would write it like 50 times before I went to bed every night. And I even told my roommate, I told him about it, and I was like, so every time you see me, just say, who's the toughest one on the team? And I'll say, I am. So like you have to just keep telling yourself this one thing over and over again. Eventually you just begin to believe it. And I think I did get a lot tougher. And it helped a lot with CIDP too. So another thing that I did, I actually I keep forgetting to put this in all of my YouTube videos and stuff, but massages are pretty helpful as well. I don't know all the science behind it, but I plan on making a YouTube video with my massage therapist, just like interviewing her, but I do know that it can help lower stress hormones, and not only does it feel good, but your body recovers a lot better when you're not always in a stressful situation, and like you just feel more calm, and like your body's just more likely to be recovering when you're calm and have less stress hormones. So another story I have is about one of my nurse practitioners at Strong Memorial Hospital, which is where I get my IV infusions when I'm at school. And my nurse practitioner asked me, you know, what do you think is the biggest determinant of like how well your outcome has come? And I was like, well, I think it's probably just IVIG, because I think that's like a huge part of like why I got so much better. And then I asked her, like, what do you think has helped me get so much better? And she's like, I think it's because of you, because you've just been so positive, and every time I come in, you're always reading books about nutrition and trying to tell other patients why they should be eating 10 bananas for lunch, and just doing everything you can in order to get better. Like she said, like, you know, just being very proactive about the whole situation. So another thing that I noticed was just physical therapy and being active is huge. So not only for increasing like your muscles, so that you don't just have weak nerve signals going to weak muscles, you have weak ones going to stronger muscles, which is always going to be helpful, right? I don't know a whole lot of the science behind it, but it can increase your nerve growth factor. And nerve growth factor, that sounds good, right? Yeah. So I also think, in my opinion, that hip strength is really underrated, because like whenever we go to the gym, like if you go to physical therapy or something, your physical therapist will say, like, you know, do squats, do like these leg strength and stuff. A lot of people just like forget about hip strength. I think that's where a lot of running injuries come into play, just because it's often neglected. So like hip strength would be like exercises would be like things like going like this. Like I don't really see many people going like that, or like just like hurdle drills. So like going like this. I don't want to hit this thing. But it's like you can look up online. There's a routine that I like called the Myrtle Hip Routine. It's spelled M-Y-R-T-Y-L. It's spelled like Myrtle Beach, but without the E. I don't know why they dropped the E. But yeah, so I found that was pretty helpful. And then having a great support system is really helpful as well. And if you don't have a great support system, like your friends or family, like maybe they don't understand exactly what you're going through, I suggest Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook accounts with like thousands of members, or they just post things like, hey, has anyone gone through this? Hey, this happened to me today. Did this ever happen to you? And most of the time people say, yeah, this is why, this has happened to me, or I know why this is happening. I talked to my doctor about this. So it's a really good way to network with people, because in the age of the internet, it's really, really helpful. And then another thing I noticed, which helped me with getting this whole presentation figured out, was writing everything down. So instead of just saying oh, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks that the IVIG started working, I can go back and look at the exact date when it started working, because I was writing down as much as I could, every day. Basically just logging everything, when I started treatment, when I started changing my diet, what I ate. That's actually how I know the exact day of when I started experiencing symptoms, because at school we had to keep a running log. And I noticed actually that my resting heart rate went from 46 in the morning, and it so slowly crept up to 60. And then actually I went to the doctors and told them about that. They're like, yeah, well, it's still within the normal range. I was like, yeah, but normal people aren't running 60 miles a week, so it's not normal for me. I'm sure you guys have had a lot of frustration with doctors. So on top of logging everything down so you can look at it later, it's good for others, so that you can help other people. You can tell them when a medication started working, so if they are feeling like it won't work, just say, hey, it took me a long time for me to respond to IVIG. So you can help other people when you look back at your whatever you log. And then another thing I did was I just acted like it wasn't a big deal, and all of a sudden it started to not seem like it was that big of a deal. I always treated CIDP like it was serious, but I would never really bring it up with my friends unless they asked about it. When my friend said, what's going on, I would just say, nothing with you. It was more like a don't ask, don't tell type thing. And then when they did ask, I would say things like, my parachute didn't open, or I got a leg transplant, or something not very serious. But one thing the final thing I did was basically I lived as naturally as you can. A lot of humans, we're just today, we're just living unnatural lives. We're supposed to be out in the sun a lot. That's why we have a lot of happiness hormones that get released when we're out in the sun, and that's why we need vitamin D, and that comes from the sun. And on top of not really going outside that often, we're not very active all the time. And being active, again, on top of creating hypertrophy of your muscles, will also release nerve growth factor. It's really hard to be healthy when you're not being active. I mean, even if your physical therapy is practicing the Rubik's Cube, and that's another thing that you could do when you're laid up. Just have other hobbies. When I couldn't run or anything, I was going to go to Photoshop. Maybe your friends have been bugging you about a book series. Maybe you never read Harry Potter and you have 7 books to read. So another thing is, on top of being active, is getting better sleep, because human growth hormone is released primarily during sleep, and that has a lot to do with tissue growth and stuff like that. So your body will you recover a lot better when you get at least 9 hours of sleep. That's what I try to get. And then it also just decreases your stress, which is great. So massages and sleep are great for reducing stress, just calming down, doing things that you like, hanging out with your friends and family and stuff. Just trying to lead as little of a stress life as you can. And then just eat human food. I know we feed cats cat food and dogs dog food, but humans are supposed to have a little bit of everything. And that's why I chose a vegan diet, because I feel we have flat teeth. We're not really supposed to be eating a whole lot of meat, and just our digestive system, our digestive tract is a lot longer than that of a carnivore. There's just so many things that point to being humans being an herbivore. And although we can digest meat, it's not really all that optimal. So that's why I've come to the conclusion that I think that we should be just eating plants, more plants than anything else, and healthy plants. I mean, processed sugar is technically vegan. It's not a health food, though. But yeah, just trying to eat more. The more fruits and vegetables you eat, the better off you're going to be. Basically, what he was saying was that you have most of your immune system is actually in your gut, and you have one cell layer that's supposed to allow certain things in, and certain things aren't supposed to go in. and basically like your diet, like different toxins like from the environment, exhaust from the cars, like we're not supposed to be breathing that in, different NSAIDs and stuff like that can like erode the lining of your small intestines, and then it can let things in that aren't supposed to be in there, like animal proteins, and then it sees it as, your body sees it as like an invader, so basically make the antibodies for that protein, but you can also have that protein in your body. Like for us, it'd be the peripheral nervous system. So basically, your body made like a antibody for an animal product that looked exactly like your peripheral nervous system. So that's how the immune system can attack the peripheral nervous system. So then, by not eating the animal products and stuff, you don't have those animal proteins floating around the bloodstream. So you won't any longer have that sort of reaction. And he's actually, him and another doctor, Roy Swank, have actually been doing studies on multiple sclerosis and diet since sometime around World War II, and that had a 95% cure rate or 95% improvement rate. Only like 5% of people ever had a relapse, and there's a direct correlation between how far off people went from the diet. And it was basically, and that diet was actually just a pretty close as like a vegetarian diet. That was more of like 10% or less of their calories coming from animal fat and stuff like that, and they still had a huge improvement rate. And that's decades of research with thousands of MS patients. And he's actually doing, Dr. June right now is actually doing a study on MS. It should be coming out pretty soon between like just a vegan diet and MS results and stuff like that. So I think I'm waiting for that study to come out. It should be pretty interesting. And if you guys are interested in learning more about just autoimmune disease and health and stuff like that, there are some books that I recommend. One, you know the author of The Autoimmune Epidemic?
No, I can't remember the name.
Well, there's a book called The Autoimmune Epidemic.
It's very helpful.
Yeah, it just talks like the different toxins and stuff in the environment that can help lead to autoimmune disease. So, a book that I actually haven't read, my mom read it, she suggests I'm hopefully reading it this summer, is a book by Michael Pollan called Eat Food, Not Too Much, Mostly Plants. And it's basically a very like common sense approach to eating like, real food. His rules are basically if it has more than like 5 or 6 ingredients, he doesn't eat it. And basically, as long as like your grandmother would recognize it as actual food, then you can eat it. If she's like, what's that? You have to explain to her that it's food. It's probably not human food. And then another good book, The Very Common Sense Approach for Eating Mostly Plants, and also has a lot of really cool recipes. It's called My Beef with Meat by Rick Esselstyn. So it just talks about like all the common questions that people may have when eating plant-based diet. And then there's, if you want like all the science behind a plant-based diet, there's actually a whole chapter on autoimmune disease and diet called the China Study by Dr. Colin T. Campbell. It was a 27-year epidemiological study in China where they basically it's mainly about cancer, but they also make connections with like autoimmune disease, heart disease, and stuff like that. They actually found, and I think it was like around 1950 or something like that, Dr. Roy Swank went to China and they tried to document all the cases of MS in China, and there were 5 cases in the whole country, and he doubted that they were even MS. They might have been like some other disease, but you know, back then, I mean, China's getting more and more westernized, so they have more McDonald's and stuff like that. And back then, their diet was mainly like rice, potatoes, very heavy in rice, and it's white rice too. A lot of people are like, oh, I can't have rice because white rice. Like, I think brown rice is better, but white rice has never really given anyone heart disease or anything, you know. And a book that Dr. John McDougall wrote was called The Starch Solution, and it's basically his reasoning for why humans should follow a starch-based diet, and basically saying like, you know, every long successful population has consisted on starch-based diet, like whether it's corn with the Aztecs, or when it's like the Middle East, they're consuming mainly wheat products and rice, corn, potatoes everywhere. Like most major societies a long time ago, before all the McDonald's and stuff popped up, were mainly like starch-based diets, and like the rich people were the ones eating all that meat and stuff, and they were the ones who were fat. And like all the trim peasants were eating like rice, corn, potatoes, things like that. So that's called The Starch Solution by Dr. John McDougall. And another book that, if you're interested in like a more fruit-based approach, there's the 80-10-10 diet by Dr. Douglas N. Graham. Basically talks about why he thinks that fruit is a natural human diet. This is a very like common sense approach. If you guys like documentaries, most of these are available on Netflix. There's one called Food Inc. It's about eating, again, like real food, and about like just like the corporations and how like corrupt they are, and how yeah.
It's very scientific based.
Oh yeah, you saw it. Yeah, it's a great documentary. It's eye opening, really. It makes you realize that like all the processed food is not real food. It's like a food-like substance, I think they might have said. And then another documentary also available on Netflix is called Vegucated, and it just covers, it's like a whole encompassing documentary about a more plant-based diet or plant-based approach. It's like goes over like the health aspects, like the social aspects, the environment and how that helps and stuff like that. It's really eye-opening as well. And then Forks Over Knives is actually it's a film about cardiovascular disease, cancer, and stuff like that, and diet. And actually, it's basically the DVD version of the China study. That as well is very eye-opening.
What was the name of that?
It was Forks Over Knives. That one is actually one of the most watched health documentaries ever. It came out in like 2011. It's very popular on Netflix. I think that's all I've got. So if you guys want to